Hey there, I'm Mark, in affiliation with Spectrum Pulse, and as you can clearly tell, I'm on vacation in an undisclosed location, and it's Billboard BREAKDOwn. I don't remember. This is about the best thing I could hope for on a vacation, a post-album bomb week where said album bomb barely left the charts, with a pretty great album too, and thus a pretty limited selection of new songs, and thus I can keep things fairly short. Should be back home base next week, although my set might look a little bit different along the way. Hope you all stick around for that. So let's keep it moving here. Our top 10, where I guess to no one surprise anymore, Choosing Texas by Ella Langley is still at number 1. This is a truly fascinating case because I expected that this would start fading well before now, especially as Nashville radio has plainly dumped it. But sales and streaming are still ridiculously strong, which is also true behind her second hit right behind herself in Be Her at number 2. At this point, I'm honestly stunned that Nashville radio has not launched a major cross-format push for this song. It's built for pop radio and prompting rather disingenuous Sabrina Carpenter comparisons by people who should really know better. And this is where my eyes are on Olivia Rodrigo with Drop Dead up to number 3. The streaming is there, for sure, but where the serious radio push, if you want to make something happen, unless she's looking to play the long game and betting nothing will snatch the top from her again in a month or two, I can see what's happening there, but it's not happening yet. Either way, our next two songs are clearly on the decline at this point as predicted. Man I Need by Olivia Dean at number 4, where apparently now the streaming is kicking into gear even as radio has long lost its edge. And I Just Might by Bruno Mars tumbling back to number 5, courtesy of declining radio. I would say, again, this could open the door for So Easy to Fall in Love by Olivia Dean holding at number 6. Her radio growth is certainly there, but again, the streaming isn't, so she's working uphill yet again. Then we got exasperatingly Ordinary by Alex Warren up to number 7, but I chalked this more up to positional shifts rather than any great strength. It just needed to remain static compared to I Can't Love You Anymore by Ella Langley and Morgan Wallen slipping back to number 8, which saw real streaming gains but only got shipped to radio this week. Way to capitalize on momentum, y'all. You think you would be better at this. Now, all this meant Folded by Kalani actually got a brief boost up to number 9. Again, feels more positional as the radio's second wind finally dies back along with her album. And that takes us to the big new entry at the bottom of the top 10, Dracula by Tame Impala featuring Jenny. Folks, I got nothing with this one. You can blame streaming as to why the remix took off well over 6 months past Halloween. Insert date as to when I last cared about Tame Impala. It's also a moving target these days. But they're even trying to ship this to radio. So how much this hold up is gonna be really up to question, especially given that Drake album bomb lurking on the horizon that's probably gonna throw all this into chaos. Just forewarning, it's coming. But before we get to that, our losers and our dropouts, and by that in the latter group I mean drop out, because it's just When Did You Get Hot by Sabrina Carpenter handily clinching her year-end list spot for 2026 without ever getting a music video. That feels like someone fumbled the ball there. It seemed like the obvious move, especially for her. Anyway, in our losers, outside of Jason Aldean seeing a sudden loss for Don't Tell Me down to 78, it's all Noah Kahan this week, so let's run through it from the top. Doors at 20, Porch Light at 36, End of August at 39, Dashboard at 41, Willing and Able at 43, American Cars at 44, Downfall at 47, and Haircut at 55. Then we got Deny at 61, Paid Time Off at 63, 23 at 64, Dan at 66, All Them Horses at 71, We Go Way Back at 81, Lighthouse at 83, Spoiled at 88, Headed North at 89, and A Few of Your Own at 95. But this many songs sticking around means that we really don't see a ton of gains or returns, and the bigger story might come in the latter because, as I predicted last week, thanks to that biopic seeing tremendous box office returns, we got multiple songs returning from the late Michael Jackson. Human Nature at 29, beat it at 32 and don't stop till you get enough at 42. Hell, I would not be surprised if they saw some more gains in the next couple weeks, like Billie Jean spiking up to 17 this week. Stay tuned for that. But we also got a few returns at the very bottom, like Rocky Mountain Low by Corey Kent and Co. Wetzel at the very bottom at 100, and Runway by Lady Gaga and Doechii riding the Devil Wears Prada 2 hype to 80. And when we look at her gains, they're kind of all over the place. Let's acknowledge the losses that rebounded first. Pop That Thang by DaBaby appears to have sealed his comeback at 26, alongside The Fall by Cody Johnson at 28, and Dry Spell by Kacey Musgraves getting an album boost up to 58. But then there are the songs that largely held their own last week and are now making use of the momentum they have, like Midnight Sun by Zara Larsson riding her deluxe reissue hype to 23, and Boston by Stella Lefty riding some basic TikTok clout to 27, and Brunette by Tucker Wetmore with the radio that just never dies at 50. But again, there's only a few gains, and only a few new arrivals too. Let's keep this snappy, and I'll start with number 97, Noble by Femi? I'm running in circles, just come closer, you're my 44, temptation to grow, my heart is a show, you and I'm sober. We're gonna start our new arrivals with two acts I did not really recognize, although I could have swore I saw this guy's name pop up across social media once or twice prior to this. Wasn't sure how to pronounce it, that's on me if it's wrong. This might be linked to this Irish-Nigerian R&B singer and producer going viral with this single on TikTok, probably more linked to fan cam, specifically tied to the third season of Euphoria. Did you know that Trisha Paytas apparently shows up in this season? My god, I don't want to talk about this train wreck, but I get the disquieting feeling that I may have to at some point on the main channel. Anyway, song itself. Yeah, I can't say I'm not impressed here. The buzzed out bass around the lockstep but oddly brittle percussion, the weedy synths that somehow sound increasingly chintzy against that gauzy backdrop, and they only build up on the hook and they don't sound that good. This sounds like the gentlest update of R&B textures that dominated the club boom down to the lyrical setting of this song. I mean, not only did I live through this nearly 20 years ago, it sure as hell wasn't the R&B I liked at that time, as everyone was trying to get their club record off and replace Chris Brown at the same time. Granted, this guy does not remind me of Chris Brown, thank the higher powers. His hazy, heavily overdubbed vocal timbre and cadence reminds me a lot more of Frank Ocean, plainly unaware that Kamari was doing that imitation way better last year. But dig into this dance floor hookup where he's faded and she's clearly out of his league. I'm reminded a little bit more of Neo, where he's better off in the passenger seat, utterly impressed by this woman who just blows his mind. Granted, the vocal mix places him a little bit too far back and muffled leaning into this. There's a slight clumsiness to the mixing and lyricism that has the feel of amateurishness that's not that surprising coming out of TikTok. But if they were looking to capture that shallow fan cam, no stakes, club ready version of what Labyrinth was doing with Euphoria, this could potentially do it at a distance. I'm just not impressed. Number 94, Damned If I Do by Vincent Mason. Don't know how I'm gonna let you go. Damned if I do, damned if I don't. Get over you, so I guess And now we got our second new name that apparently I should know. Vincent Mason is another dude in the onslaught of interchangeable guys that Nashville shovels out with regularity, mostly because he's been a common opening act, and man, some of the names I see pop up around this guy just gave me a real sinking feeling. Currently opening for Morgan Wallen, collaborating with Gavin Adcock, possibly a relationship with Stella Lefty. Why are the vibes seeming to curdle before my eyes? Anyway, he went viral with a song that dropped a few years back. He put out his debut album in November last year. Naturally, his first Hot 100 single takes 6 months to get here, and oh man, those vibes did not get any better, because this really tested my patience in record time. The drippy pedal steel that feels perfunctory and just buried, the creaking acoustics, what sounds like a touch of sour organ buried around the hook, a brighter guitar solo that feels just as disposable. Nashville has now embraced TikTok songwriting structural cliches. Well, here it just feels blatant, not for the better. But what might be more alarming is Vincent Mason himself. And not since Malcolm Todd have I had such an immediate allergic reaction to somebody's voice, where his twang just sounds like whining. He's got no tangible grit nor intensity. I've heard comparisons being made to John Mayer, and as much as I can't stand John Mayer, it's not giving Mayer enough credit as a singer in comparison with this guy, who sounds like he has been dragged up at karaoke and would rather be anywhere else, down to that irritating vocal melody and sounding weirdly shoved back and unsupported in the mix. And the writing is pretty bad too. Another stock post-heartbreak drinking song that can't sell any misery or anger and just winds up mush, where he's trying to choose whether to get over his ex or not, because either way sucks. So he chooses not to get over her, but on the second verse includes lines about how whoever's next has a tough act to follow because the sex was just that good. That to me was the revealing moment of the song, where it all just feels so self-serving and self-pitying. At least Tucker Wetmore opted for a change in hair color when he's on his post-breakup bender / downward spiral. He's at least trying compared to this track. Yeah, that's where the standard's at now, and this absolutely sucks. And while we're here, number 90, Fallin by Chris Brown featuring Leon Thomas.
Somehow, girl, you wake me up. Baby, we ain't been making love. I just need a taste of your love.
Unfortunately, circling back to Chris Brown, because we couldn't quite get rid of him in the late 2000s after he put Rihanna in the hospital, and I've said for a long while that I'm out of things to say about him. And when Alphonse Pierre did such a sterling job ripping that god-awful album of his to shreds at Pitchfork, why would I need to bother and add more? But apparently he's got a new song charting with Leon Thomas of all people, and uncredited vocals from Tank. He really should have been credited. When the first thought I had listening to this is, well, damn, can we get Tank handling this song on his own? I would like that way more. That's not a promising sign. And yeah, that does include Leon Thomas. What the hell is up with the tinny vocal master here? Between this and his verse on Kalani's album, he's really not doing himself any favors with the production of his voice on these features. But really, the vocal mix is a cluttered mess all over the project, especially as Brown's overmixed and auto-tuned overdubs don't remotely match with the throwback bluesy drums and guitars and spikes of horns, including a wailing electric guitar solo. At this point, I'm sorry, it's galling. Chris Brown feels like his own worst enemy with this vocal mix. If he's such an impressive performer as Team Breezy keeps telling me, why the hell do his vocals sound so uncanny, so poorly blended with more organic tones? At least Tank can bring some real soul to this, even if he's fighting through the same bad vocal mix. But even then, the song's just not much to write home about. Mostly because the pleading melodrama barely feels coherent, especially as Leon Thomas's verse seems to imply more of a relationship that went south, and Chris Brown and Tank are looking at one that seems to have barely started, as they haven't hooked up yet, and they desperately want to. In short, it sounds like the worst possible version of Chris Brown makes a blues and soul song with Tank and Leon Thomas that you could possibly get. It's not good. Skip it. Number 87, Fine Place to Die by Alex Warren.
Happily dancing with you, take my body, and I'll be the soul you come crashing into. If it has to be the end, all I ask is that I get to burn with you.
I've been getting an uneasy feeling about Alex Warren for a while now. I heard a lot of the underlying insecurity underscoring his album last year, which was really better than it had any right to be. And when you title a song like this, it immediately raised an alarm bell. And that was the right thought, but for the reason I did not expect. You see, Alex Warren's now got his entry in the list of The World is Ending, so why not fuck tonight ballads, a song topic I increasingly despise because it's built to reinforce the helplessness of any given situation and feels fundamentally self-serving and insecure as love songs, which is the worst possible affect to place alongside Alex Warren's earnest belting. To be fair, I prefer Warren at least trying compared to junk like If the World Was Ending by J.P. Sachs and Julia Michaels, but it also shows him learning the wrong lessons from ordinary success, doubling down on the slow, ponderous, strings accented, choir boosted, borderline Christian music template that he struggles to deliver with any fire or soul, which is a bad sign when the song is accenting all this doom and gloom that he's seeing on the TV. And that's the other thing. Alex Warren's not looking outside of himself to engage with anything actually happening in this apocalypse, or even offering a sense of comfort to his partner. This is all about everyone burning together in one last blaze of glory. And then you just realize that it's nakedly ripping off Die With a Smile by Lady Gaga and Bruno Mars, which focuses a lot less on the burning and more on the lovemaking, and then more importantly is smart enough to be a duet, accentuate the connection, something even J.P. Sachs and Julia Michaels got right. I'm reminded of what a colleague once said about the songs where someone claims that they would die for a lover, and how they never really buy in because it feels more like a self-conscious, predominantly male fantasy designed to love bomb rather than anything real. And from Alex Warren, yeah, sadly, absolutely in that territory, and a pretty bad song to boot. Next, number 84, Horses and Divorces by Kacey Musgraves featuring Miranda Lambert.
Of the battle, and we're finding we got a few things in common, like horses and divorces, and we both like to drink. Maybe we're more alike than we think.
I mean, I can appreciate the irony of covering this long overdue duet while I'm currently in an undisclosed location in Texas on family vacation, which does the very respectable thing of only revealing industry gossip when it's time to put all of it to bed. For those of you who have not heard the whispers, Kacey Musgraves used to be a songwriter behind the scenes before she broke out, and for Miranda Lambert. And there was a falling out over Mama's Broken Heart, which Musgraves wrote with Brandy Clark and Shane McAnally, and she saw it potentially as a breakout single for her on her album, but the song got shopped to Miranda Lambert instead. It became a real charting hit, and that apparently sparked a grudge that lasted well over a decade and was only ever talked about in very specific niche country gossip circles until Musgraves and Lambert decided to bury the hatchet with what some have described as their version of Girl So Confused. I'm not sure I would go that far. The roots of this seem to run a lot deeper than just a misunderstanding to be worked out in the remix, but the song is still pretty damn good, if not exactly a personal favorite of mine from that album, Middle of Nowhere. Yeah, that might be the surprising swerve here, because it's very clearly playing for an accordion-backed, very traditional country template, rich with the pedal steel and playing to a slightly slower tempo, with the sort of ramshackle live vocal pickups where you can tell that it's built to accentuate that barroom commiseration, where they've had a few too many whiskeys and they're just blearily singing along together. And sure, that can be a lot of fun. I think of the writing as really the star of the show, and finding things that they share in common, which is surprisingly not any exes given the insular nature of Texas country, but it feels smaller than what both women can deliver, which is a complaint I have about Middle of Nowhere, and I kind of wish the vocal harmonies had a little bit more diversity to them, make the most of the reunion. It's still a good song, but knowing both of their pens maybe should have been great. All I'm saying. And finally, number 74, Bring Your Love by Madonna and Sabrina Carpenter.
Break me, bring your love, 'cause you cannot take me down.
You know what? I respect the idea of this at least. Both women have gotten way too much shit for their teasing sexual provocation that tends to cover up for other issues in their writing and personas. I prefer Madonna actually just dive back headfirst into it instead of making lazy meta commentary like I'm popular with The Weeknd and Playboi Carti, which might be among her worst ever songs. And thus, with this, relying on a liberal inner city sample from the late 80s and a Rochelle Jordan interpolation from last year to affect those vintage house grooves in which Madonna saw a commercial peak, we got a song all about the backlash that's centered on them, where the through line is that they were doing it all for the love of the game, where they don't really care about the numbers or the moral compass or any celebrity. And okay, look, there is some truth here, but you cannot tell me that either Sabrina Carpenter or Madonna don't care about fame or celebrity. It's a running through line in their art. Don't piss on me and tell me it's raining. But moreover, it feels kind of obvious as a retro pastiche to peak Madonna, with a very obvious acolyte going through similar strife where too much of the discourse is just bad around them and they want to respond. But that's also a template I've heard before. Lady Gaga did this. Ariana Grande did this 2 years ago. Everyone trying to rip off Madonna the past 30 years does this, and Disaffection doesn't make the best use of how expressive they can both be on the mic. That's kind of the rub with this. It's generally fine. They've got decent chemistry. The groove is well balanced and pretty well produced, and I think there are some pithy lines. Your vision of me is a killer of joy. That's a bar, even if it's bracketed with the don't comment on my ideas, I don't want your judgment or your expectations. I mean, come on, it's craving adoration without question or examination, when they're both smart enough to know that said discourse is what got them so far in celebrity, and the discourse around this song might get them even further. Or will it? The problem with going to this well of metatext and paratext so often is that eventually folks want you to say more about this than doing it all for love. And the biggest indictment of the song is that it's not that it's good nor bad. It's familiar. All I'm saying. Anyway, that's this week. Very easy best of the week choice for Horses and Divorces by Kacey Musgraves featuring Miranda Lambert. With the worst, yeesh, there's a lot of crap here. But Damned If I Do by Vincent Mason really turned my stomach. Truly awful breakthrough. Don't need to say any more of this guy. Anyway, next week I will be home. We'll probably have a lot more fallout from all of this to deal with. Stay tuned for that. But until then, I'm Mark. You're watching Billboard Breakdown, affiliated with Spectrum Pulse, while on vacation. And I'll see you next time.